The story begins in a small town called Vallecillo, hidden in the middle of a thick forest. For generations, Vallecillo has lived under the shadow of fear of the Grim Reaper, the god of death. In this dark night, his presence will be palpable. Vallecillo is shrouded in impenetrable darkness. In the central plaza, villagers gather for the annual rite of prophecies, where they seek to glimpse their destiny in the flames. The old woman named Elena, the only one capable of communicating with the Grim Reaper, approaches the fire and begins to mutter incomprehensible words. People listen in silence, eager for what she will say. Elena reveals that the Grim Reaper is hungry and that only the sacrifice of an innocent soul can quench his thirst. People murmur in fear and despair. Amid the tumult of the crowd, a young woman named Isabella feels singled out by the prophecy. The gaze of the villagers falls on her, who must fulfill her sacrifice to save the town. Isabella is taken to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, where she will be handed over to the Grim Reaper. Tension and fear take over the town as they wait for dawn. The Grim Reaper appears in the abandoned house with his black clothes and his sharp sickle. Isabel is led to the altar, and the sacrificial rite begins. The young woman's screams fill the place. The Grim Reaper consumes Isabella's soul, but instead of leaving, the entity becomes even hungrier and angrier. Vallecillo plunges into chaos of terror. The villagers try to escape the Grim Reaper's wrath, but realize they cannot leave the village. They are trapped in a twisted dimension under the control of the Grim Reaper. The trees of the forest surrounding Vallecillo come to life, writhing and whispering words of condemnation. Shadows lurk in every corner of the city. The Grim Reaper begins to harvest souls without mercy, regardless of age or innocence. The townspeople witness unimaginable horrors as lifeless bodies pile up. A group of villagers decide to confront the Grim Reaper, arming themselves with everything they can find. Their determination is strong, but they are at a disadvantage against the supernatural entity. In the central square, the battle against the Grim Reaper breaks out. Swords clash with the Grim Reaper's sickle, and blood soaks the ground as the villagers fight to survive. The Grim Reaper, impossible to defeat, annihilates the rebellious villagers one by one. The few survivors flee in search of refuge in the houses, but the Grim Reaper will not let them escape. A group of villagers manage to flee the town, but are condemned to live in the darkness of the forest, while the Grim Reaper continues his reign of terror in Vallecillo. Elena, the old oracle, confesses that she herself made a pact with the Grim Reaper to obtain his power and is now an accomplice in his revenge. The Reaper's curse is unsurpassable. The surviving villagers discover that the forest itself is filled with souls tormented by the Grim Reaper. Every tree seems to hide a lost spirit. A villager named Alejandro, with ancient knowledge, believes he can find a way to seal the Grim Reaper and free the village. Alejandro gathers the survivors and proposes a bold plan to confront the Grim Reaper on his own territory and seal him with an ancient amulet. Alejandro guides the survivors through an ancient ritual in the heart of the forest. The night is filled with smoke and mystery as they prepare to face the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper appears in the heart of the forest, determined to kill the last survivors. The battle that follows is epic and heartbreaking, with destiny at stake. After a fierce fight, Alejandro manages to seal the Grim Reaper in the ancient amulet. The darkness begins to dissipate, and the villagers feel a glimmer of hope. The survivors return to Vallecillo, which has been deeply transformed by the horrors experienced. The city is finally free of the Grim Reaper. The town reflects on the price they had to pay to free themselves from the Grim Reaper. The scar on their souls is deep, and the fear will last for generations. Vallecillo begins to recover, although the wounds of the past are difficult to forget. The survivors strive to build a better future. Alejandro knows that the ancient amulet must be guarded forever. but he fears that one day someone will try to free the Grim Reaper again. Elena, the ancient oracle, retreats into the forest, leaving her dark past behind. Loneliness will be her companion in her old age. The forest that was once filled with the whispers of tormented souls becomes silent. The Grim Reaper remains sealed in the amulet, waiting patiently. Although Vallecillo is free from the Grim Reaper, the survivors know that the shadow of death will never completely disappear. The villagers begin to have recurring nightmares about the Grim Reaper, as if the entity is trying to return in their dreams. Alejandro warns the villagers about the danger of freeing the Grim Reaper again and urges them to keep the amulet safe. A young man from the town, intrigued by the story of the Grim Reaper, finds the amulet and begins experimenting with it. The young man accidentally frees the Grim Reaper. Darkness takes over Vallecillo again, and the nightmare begins again. The villagers must face the Grim Reaper again, but this time the entity is more furious and thirsty for revenge than ever. The final battle is even more intense and terrifying than the previous one. The villagers fight desperately, knowing that this time there might be no escape. At the height of the battle, a villager sacrifices himself to seal the Grim Reaper back into the amulet, albeit at immense cost. The town of Vallecillo is left in ruins, and the survivors are devastated by their losses. They know they must leave the town forever. The survivors carry with them the emotional scars of the terror they experienced, knowing that the Grim Reaper will always lurk in their nightmares. The ancient amulet is buried in a secret place, where it will wait silently until someone else, tempted by power, discovers it. The survivors settle in a new place, trying to leave the painful memories of Vallecillo behind, even though they know they will never be completely safe.